Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Football World Championship, home to the industry's most accurate rankings.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, as usual, Adam Krautwurst, and with me, until you knock us out of the top 10, it's Jack Kohlscheen. Knock us out of the top 10 of the Fantasy Football World Championships here at the FFWC. With me is Jack, and we have a special guest tonight. Most of you know him as Daily Double in the leagues and the chats, but we know him as Jerry Bryant. Who's doing really well this year. Welcome to the show, Jerry. What's going on, man?
Oh, nothing, man. Thanks for having me. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be great to pick your brain, right? Right, Jack?
Yeah, we're at that time of the season when you're shaking things up. So the Panthers fire Frank Reich and Commanders fire Jack Del Rio, and we hire Jerry Bryant. So we're shaking things up.
Jerry Bryant sounds like a coach's name, right? Like that should be. Jerry Jones, Des Bryant combination.
Or an owner.
There or something like that.
Del Rio is about as old as me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and every time Frank Reich gets fired, I feel a little, I'm a Bills fan growing up. Greatest comeback of all time, Frank Reich Bills against the Oilers. Jerry, were you rooting for the Houston Oilers back then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget it. Warren Moon and I think it was Glanville. Wasn't he the coach, or was it somebody? Pardee. Oh, I think it was Pardee.
There you go.
Awful. Jack probably even remembers that. I think he may have been. Were you in Houston then, Jack?
I think I was. Yeah. I met Warren Moon as a kid.
Really?
At a car dealership. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Got an autographed football from him.
Can't believe that. I
know. Bring it all back. That's the only good memory I have of the Buffalo Bills. So that's about it. It was that one game, and now it's getting worse and worse. But anyways, back to the show here. Jerry, you're doing really well this year, man. We're going to talk about a Survivor Pool with you tonight that you're doing super well in. We're gonna talk about the FFWC Top 100 Invitational, which I guess you are running away with that as well. So. And then we'll talk about some start sits. If anyone has any start sit questions, feel free to jump in the chat. We'll answer some of those. And let's get rolling here. But so Jerry, Survivor Pool, 2 players left. You and Bill, and you have some teams left that he hasn't used. He has some teams left that you haven't used. Well, let's talk through it a little bit. I'm sure you've been wondering about it. It was a free entry, yes, and the winner gets a world championship team.
Yeah, $2,000 entry. So it's something be nice to win.
Fantastic.
I didn't even know it till after about 5 weeks, and I said, "What does this thing win?" I said, "Holy crap! Yeah, that'd be nice to win that." And
for sure, for sure. And the FFWC and Scott are great about giveaways and prizes. Is like they just want the guys to have fun. They want everyone to win, and so that's really great that they did that. So. The teams that you have used so far, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, San Francisco, Miami, the LA Rams, Seattle, the Chargers, I almost said the Clippers, the Los Angeles Chargers, New Orleans, Dallas, Detroit, and the Tennessee Titans. So you used the Titans and you're still alive? Like what? Am I reading the right?
Last week it was between Tennessee, and then I was thinking Philadelphia at Buffalo. That would have been a sweat.
Don't you dare.
And then Minnesota and Chicago. And one of the teams picked Minnesota. So there were 3 last week.
Yeah.
The 2. And I came an inch from switching from Tennessee to, one of those others.
To Minnesota. Yeah. No, I get it. So let's just talk Survivor Pool in general. Is this your first one? Have you done these before? Like, how do you?
I've done them forever, man.
Okay. What is your strategy at this point? Like going into this, you're not looking too far down the road. Is it just the week in front of you?
Normal Survivor is just the week in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now at this point, getting to week 13, that's pretty unusual. And so now you're kind of looking ahead, but like that Circa, that thing's weird, man. They have these weird weeks where you only have 4 teams to pick from. That was a totally different
Yikes.
thing. And so we had to you had to really think about who you're picking every week, which is one of the reasons I think we picked Jacksonville, because we were saving teams. But normal survivors, I always just pick the best thing that week.
Yep. Makes sense.
Right.
Makes sense. Now, what if you two both pick the wrong team this week? Do you
I was wondering about that. I have no idea how they would.
Well, Scott's in the chat still. If Scott's still, maybe you can answer that for us, Scott, while we're moving on in this conversation. But yeah, that'd be pretty interesting.
Cage match.
Yeah, that's right. That's cage match. So what are you thinking, Jerry? What do you, as you're moving through this, as you're getting down to for the final two guys?
Well, me and Bill have picked the exact same teams except week 1, where I picked Baltimore, and he picked Washington. So he's got a little edge on me there.
Wow.
But this week, really, all I've got, I'm looking at Jacksonville versus Cincinnati, which
Good news, Jerry. You guys both advance.
I've already
put
that in. And the only other one I could find was Tampa Bay versus Carolina in Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh versus Arizona. I'm not real fond of picking Pittsburgh right now with little hands.
How dare you? How dare you?
But right now, I've got Jacksonville in there. And it's funny, last week I was sweating out Tennessee. And the week before, I got real lucky because I had Detroit against Chicago. And if you'll remember, 3 minutes left, Detroit was down by 12 or something. I was like, I'd already quit.
It's over. Yeah.
The safety and only the walk-off safety. Yeah.
But,
Goff has little hands too, so
it's funny.
That can help.
These survivors, you're sitting there like last week. God dang, if I can just get through this game, then I got Jacksonville next week. I'll be good. And now I'm sitting here thinking, I'm starting to think of all the reasons why Jacksonville can lose. That's just the nature of these things. And Cincinnati was probably a top 5 team for Burrow now. So, they've got a real good defense and hasn't been as good as last year, but Jacksonville seems to always get better at the end of the year. And I don't think there's any option for me but to pick Jacksonville here. Okay,
so do you look at I'm sure you do this stuff, but do you look at the spreads? Does that factor, like what Vegas thinks, like as far as like, hey, my gut might say one thing, but the numbers say another?
Yeah, usually when you first start looking at that week, first thing you look at are the odds and look for the high odds, right? Especially early in the year.
Yeah.
And and Vegas knows, man. So it's always a good idea to go with them if you're not sure. But yeah, a lot of these things though, it's just gut feeling. That's your best bet. And don't change. Like I said, these last few weeks, man, I've almost changed both times and it would cost me.
Oh, brutal. So you're thinking Cincinnati at Jacksonville. Jacksonville's
8.5
-8. Yeah, 8.5. I'm looking at a couple different spreads. It says a 66.9% to win outright. So that's pretty good, especially for this time of year. What are you thinking, Jack? He's thinking Jacksonville, and the other one was Pittsburgh and Arizona.
Or Tampa Bay versus Carolina.
Or Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think if I was going to pivot, it'd be Tampa. But the divisional matchups always, like those are just prone for weird outcomes and upsets. Teams study each other. There's coaching change, maybe that inspires a bit of a change. And Carolina's defense has never been terrible. Brian Burns, they've got some weapons there. So Baker could just be Baker one day and throw a few picks and
right.
They could limp through. So I agree with Jacksonville. Tampa would be the pivot, and the Steelers spook me right now. So I'd stay away from that as long as I could.
Yeah. The Tampa Carolina thing scares me just in and of itself. Frank Reich fight. Like whenever you get a new coach, all of a sudden everyone feels energized and revived. Now, I don't think he got fired because he's a terrible coach, even though they have a terrible. I mean, you would know more than this, Jack, because that's your area, that's your team. But like, he's butting heads with the owner. He wanted Stroud, and the owner wanted what they got, and now he's got to pay them. The owner made a mistake. He took the wrong quarterback, and the rest is history. And now Frank Reich's got to take the fall for it.
Well, Carolina's getting really good at bouncing back after they fire their head coach because they did the exact same thing last year. So,
there you go. Right.
That happens a lot too. Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise, they lost CMC and bounced back. They just have a tendency to do that, which, maybe that's more narrative than anything, but we're all grasping at straws on this stuff. So
right.
If you can stay away from that variance, then I would.
Yeah, Las Vegas. I mean, look at them. They look like crap, and then they get a new coach, and they all of a sudden look like a team.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, and in that case, I think the coach is terrible, and nobody even the players are celebrating in the locker room after he gets fired. It's so good. What's incredible. I love going off tangent on stuff like this. What's incredible is everyone sees it. Us couch potato losers, guys, fantasy football, whatever. We don't know anything, right, about the NFL. What can we know? But we can tell you that this coach is terrible. He's terrible for years and years and years and years. Everyone who touches Tom Brady's cloak and leaves him is terrible. Just look at Bill Belichick. He's got a worse record than Wayne Fontes as a head coach without Tom Brady. Okay, so no offense to the Lions guys and the Wayne Fontes lovers out there, but
Wayne Fontes, you had that one in the chamber ready to go, didn't you?
Dude, I could talk how overrated Belichick is until the end of it. If you had a person, let's take it into the poker space. If you had the greatest poker player of all time that got caught cheating at the highest level twice, and you're like, yeah, but he's still the greatest poker player. He is? I thought he was
doing it.
I thought he was a cheater twice. Right. Oh, and look, his other coaches who left got caught doing the same thing. Anyways, I don't know how we got on the Belichick rant, but that's how I roll. So anyways, narrative street. I think you're making the right move, Jerry, with the Jaguars. Good luck to you this week with that. And
absolutely.
Good luck to Bill as well. And hopefully, hey, one of you guys will win this thing. Hey, if you both lose, you guys move on in the next week. So that's
what Scott said.
That's what Scott said in the chat right here. It's live. It's public. Everyone can see it. So, all right. So next we're going to bring up your top 100. And before as I'm bringing that up, Jack, talk to this is off the cuff, but talk to us about the top 100 in Vegas, the experience. Jerry, the same thing, the draft atmosphere. Also, who's in this? Talk to me about the top 100. Go ahead, Jack.
So the top 100 is a unique draft. It takes place right after the Thursday night game. So It's the first opportunity to draft after seeing those results. It's a confined league, so it's just the 12 people competing against each other. It uses a victory point system, so you get 2 points each week for a win. And then based upon where you rank in points, you get either 2, 1, or 0 points in addition. So it balances that a little bit more. And the other unique thing is that there's an auction for your draft position prior to the draft. So you're bidding to decide where you're drafting from. And I took part in this. Jerry took part in this. I think part of the challenge of this too is that it's right after that Thursday night game. So there's some, you got all the kind of nerves and energy, the hype coming off of that game. There's a good deal of intoxication. It's a pretty wild draft, and but definitely a lot of skilled players. And in this one, it's been hotly contested throughout. But here in the past 4, 5 weeks, Jerry's really started to run away with it here.
Yeah, Chad Schrader, Frankie.
Chad's always in the mix.
It's a stacked group.
John Rozak's a stud. Yeah. Yeah, no. This is
last year's main event champions here, the Detroit Ice Holes.
Oh, there you go. Yep, perfect. So it's always tough, and I can speak to the. Look at this guy. Is that John Daly? There he is.
That's perfect.
Oh, incredible!
After his wife attacked him before a golf round.
I thought our wives attack us after we get home from a 9-hour golf round.
He had to go to the first tee box without scratches on his face.
Oh my God. But yeah, so as far as the draft's concerned, it's after the Thursday night party, and man, let me tell you guys something. I know, Jerry, you go out to Vegas. I know Jack's there. Like that Thursday, there isn't a better spread that you're going to find for the Thursday night game anywhere, as far as like the atmosphere, what you're looking at, and also the food there was just incredible. I mean, they were bringing out like Wagyu burgers and chicken. I mean, they had everything. Like they had more food than we knew what to do with. And I came hungry too. So great time, great experience. So I could see people stumbling into that draft afterwards, like trying to figure out what's up and what's down. Good stuff. So
Top Golf was good too, man.
I did the Top Golf draft as well on Friday night. That was fun for sure. And that team is closing in on a playoff berth for me as well. So so let's talk about this draft, Jerry. So did you go into it? What did you bid, if you remember, on your draft position? Were you targeting a certain draft position? Talk to me.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the most important thing I can say is I haven't won a damn thing yet.
That's true. That's right.
That's right.
I think Jack's trying to put the kibosh on me here.
Well,
or Scott. But anyway,
you're playing number 2 this week. You're playing Brian Alford, the number 2 spot, and I'm in number 3. So.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
This is why
one or the other.
It's crazy, but I haven't even looked back at the draft board except until lunchtime today to write down some notes on a piece of paper so I could be ready for this. And but I went in. I wanted Hill, so I bid on number 3 slot.
Okay.
I think I bid 100, and this is your waiver wire bidding money.
Yes. Yep.
And I believe I bid 100. I can't remember if somebody else bid or they just let me have it. But I had so many drafts with the first and second pick all year. I was tired of getting, JJ and Chase, and I love Hill. So I said, I need some more here. That's who I want. So that was one of the good things, that I pat my back on was a good choice there because he's been remarkable.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff that happened after we're lucky, like a lot of this stuff is real lucky. But I was looking at the first 7 picks, and they turned out just really good.
So from looking at it, you went Tyreek, and then you went
Keenan Allen. Okay.
Late second. I like it. Did you have a lot of Keenan Allen this year, Jerry? Is that your guy? Was that one of your guys?
And then Mahomes 4, which was a little early, but can't remember the thinking. But then Lockett, who hasn't been bad. Addison, and then White, the running back. That was one of the picks that really turned out good. I think this is out of 50 teams. This is the only time I ever picked him. So that's one of the kind of luck factors there. And then I went Dalvin Cook. That didn't work out too good. But the next pick, Brian Robinson, the reason I picked him, I can't stand plotters and, guys that are catching passes. But I was seeing like Schrader and Rozak and all these guys picking him. And I'm like, why are they picking this guy, and in other drafts, right? And so when it came around, I said, well, maybe I better get him. And I think this might be the only draft I got him in. So, but it was based on what I had seen these guys that have won a hell of a lot more than me. They're picking these guys. And so I said, well, maybe I ought to get one. So plus there were about 20 beers already down at the time. So
of course.
You're a little more, take a few more chances.
Throw caution to the wind for sure. The cool thing about this format, Jerry, is that the victory points really, you were talking about luck earlier, but the victory points really allow it so that even if you're unlucky, you can still get through. I have a couple victory points leagues where I have a losing record, but I'm in first or second in my division or whatever, because I'm scoring every single week. I really like victory points.
Love it.
I wouldn't listen, Scott, if you're still here, I wouldn't hate them changing the world championships to victory points. That would be really cool. I don't know how that works with the, with the placement and all that for rankings and stuff, but I love the victory points format. Can you pull up the draft board, Jack? Any chance? Yeah. Cause I'd love to see the draft board here.
And while he's doing that, one thing I noticed when I looked at the draft board is the guy that's in second. His draft was horrible, and I can't shake him. My team's scoring. He never goes away.
Yeah.
And I looked at his draft board, and I'm like, he must have picked up a lot of guys on waivers, man.
I bet you're going to see Kyron Williams on that team or something or whatever. There's been a lot of teams like that, Jerry, that I've looked at and be like, man, this guy's in first place and his team like
the draft board, yeah.
You know,
there you go.
All right, here we go. Perfect. So you got your boy Tyreek, then Keenan Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs. Listen, you know how I feel about Jahmyr Gibbs. I was the one wearing his jersey all over Vegas.
That's right, I remember
Thursday night. So I like to see that come around. Mahomes, are you normally a QB early guy, Jerry, or was it this year, or like what were you thinking?
I seem to do it more this year than normal. Because I got burned so bad last year by waiting. Last year was a bad year to wait for quarterbacks. And so I got Mahomes quite a bit. No Hurts, one Allen. But yeah, I like Mahomes.
Now,
team.
And it's good to see that like the success you're having. Mahomes is, what is he, QB like 6 or 7? Like I don't even think he's in the top 5 now. Yeah. Like depending on your league scoring, like he has not had a good year.
No.
But again, if you take him as QB2 and he ends up as QB 5, 4, 5, 6, like it doesn't kill you, right? Allen's going to be QB1 for the 4th year in a row because he's him. But so that's a nice solid start. Lockett's been kind of underwhelming, kind of hit and miss. I have a lot of Lockett too. Addison the same way. But then you pounded this kind of running back a little right after the running back dead zone where a lot of the 0 RB guys like to attack it. Rashad White, Delvin Cook, Brian Robinson, like you said. And you make such a good point too, Jerry, about like looking and see what other people are doing. We all do that, right? We're all looking like, what's this guy doing? What's that guy doing? These guys that have made all of this money. The other thing you got to be cognizant about too is that at this time of the year, being like the season starting, it's the opening weekend. A lot of these guys might be just looking to diversify their portfolio too. Like they're just looking to like, they might not even like Brian Robinson. I'm like, my God, I only have 2% Brian Robinson. I got to get a little bit more. So either way, it ended up working out for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. That happens a lot. I think I saw Jack do that a couple of years ago when he had like 50 world mid-stakes teams. At the end, he was drafting a little differently because I was watching.
It's getting a little bored.
Yeah, exactly.
Had to mix it up.
Bunch of drinks, getting a little bored.
No, I think the big takeaway that I see from your draft, Jerry, is there were no big mistakes in the beginning. There were no big career or season-ending injuries. Like your first 7 picks were all solid, and then you really hit in some of your later darts. Like obviously Tank Dell is a great example, and Rashee Rice starting to come online. But even the Dallas Cowboys defense has really exploded, and then picking up Trey McBride. You've really combined the stability, the safe. Known commodities with a good mix of upside that really hit. So,
and
well done.
Lucky with injuries.
Yeah, well, that's the name of the game.
Right.
Well, listen, it has been the past 2 years. I mean, I was talking to somebody today. The last 2 years with injuries have been like nothing I've ever experienced in fantasy. I've been playing fantasy since I was a child. And then the 2 years before that, we had all the COVID stuff going on. Like we had to carry 5 quarterbacks because you didn't know if one was going to get off the plane with COVID. Like it was just a disaster. It's been a wild 4 years of just randomness. So yeah, having those picks up top that don't miss and that are healthy, that's a really, really nice start to be able to work with.
Yeah. That's the whole thing there. Like he said, Dell. And I picked 3 Texans wide receivers. I picked Woods and Mechie because I wasn't real sure, but Dell is my most owned wide receiver across the league. So I was pretty high on him. Andrew Palermo, the Mr. Pink, kind of got me on him, and he saw some video and said, man, this guy is something. And so I he's a U of H boy too. So
there you go. I was more of a Nico Collins guy, so I don't have a lot of Tank Dell. Nico hasn't been disappointing like when he plays. It's just he's been banged up a lot, and Tank Dell's obviously been great too. Who saw this offense coming though, right? I mean, it's you never would have thought this offense was going to happen.
Funny thing,
Singletary.
I've done 50 drafts, and the night after this, I had some buddies in a mid-stakes live draft, and they didn't never done this before, right? But in the last round, they picked Stroud, and I said, that's the first time I saw Stroud drafted all season, right? And look at him now,
I know.
You're starting him over Herbert.
I know. Yeah. That's right. That's absolutely right. If it was up to Jack, we'd start him over every quarterback. You know what I mean? Like it's his boy.
I've got a couple Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud teams, and it is a weekly struggle because I usually end up going Hurts, but man, it's closer than you'd think it'd be. Speaking
of Jalen Hurts, I was reading. See what you guys think about this. I was reading some advance rate metrics for this season so far, and the big one last year was Kelsey Mahomes was like 75%. If you had them, you advanced to 75% of the leagues. This year, right now, that's at like 16, 17%. It can obviously get a little bit higher, but this year it's Hurts and AJ Brown were and it was hard to really do it if you went like AJ Brown and then waited to the 3-4 turn. It was kind of hard to do that in a lot of leagues. FFWC quarterbacks fell a lot more than some of the other sites, so it was a little bit easier to do it there. But I think if you've got some Hurts, AJ Brown teams out there, I think you're looking pretty good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And sometimes too, we can kind of overthink it, Jack, where we go, with this guy and the metrics and this, but I heard. I wish I remember what the podcast was. I heard this podcast over the summer where someone's like, you know what? If I just take AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, like I know those guys are going to smash. Like sometimes you don't have to get all sexy with the picks. Like you were talking about Jerry's team, like they're just safe, solid, didn't lose your draft in the first 4 or 5 rounds.
Yeah, and I think it kind of relates back to the Survivor Pool talk we were having before. I think, in our Survivor Pool that I was in with Jerry earlier this season, we kind of got ahead of ourselves, thinking too far ahead and planning for late season, neglecting the beginning. And I think you can do the same when you start, before the season even starts, to be playing out kind of these real intricate galaxy brain scenarios where, Keenan Allen's good at football and he may be old, but he's still good at football and hasn't stopped being good at football. And yet we want to be the first on kind of the leading edge or the cutting edge to spot something when it's, most of the time not making mistakes, getting yourself a solid start into the season and then playing the waiver wire and tweaking and taking advantage of opportunities. Probably better than, overthinking it.
Yeah.
Jerry, what is your take on, because I'm guilty of being, I would rather be a year early. I'd rather be off of a guy a year early than a year late. Because the way I look at it is, even if I don't have a ton of Keenan Allen, I have some. But even if I don't take Keenan Allen and he smashes, well, the guy that I take can still smash too. Like everyone can win in that scenario. So I'm usually like a get off a year early guy. Are you because I have friends that I draft with and against that are like, I'm just going to take this guy until he proves me wrong. And they're willing to spend that 3rd round pick on a guy. We're using Keenan Allen as an example, but there's plenty of other ones where I'm going to take him. Travis Kelce is a good example, especially listen, I'm just going to take
Mike
him
Evans.
until the wheels fall off. Mike Evans. I'm going to take him until the wheels fall off. What do you think, Jerry?
Perfect example, exactly what you're saying. At the end of last year, thought I saw a Keenan Allen that was getting a little older and maybe lost a step.
Well, he had like a 9-week hamstring injury last year.
I thought the same thing about Evans. And so during the beginning of the draft, I wasn't even looking at Allen. And again, Andrew said, Jerry, did you see what Allen did the last, 6 games or something? And all I remembered was, it seemed like he's getting old or something. I went back and looked at that shit. He tore it up. So I started drafting him, and he's I've got him a bunch, but I wouldn't have probably if I didn't listen to somebody that was watching. I'm like you, I was done with him. Now Evans, I didn't get him anywhere, so that was a big mistake. That guy's amazing, man. And
Hall of Famer Mike Evans. It's like I know you guys haven't been on the show with me for longer, but the last couple, I've been calling Mike Evans a Hall of Famer for 3 years. It's kind of my mantra. Hall of Famer Mike Evans. I've loved the guy, but he's having his career year.
It's unbelievable.
Career year with Baker Mayfield. He had Tom Brady, for God's sakes. He's having a career year. Baker Mayfield makes no sense, but
I wish somebody would have walked me off that, because I just like Allen, I said, I'm not going to draft him anywhere because I think he's done. And man, that was a huge mistake there.
Well, a lot of these guys too, we're just going to talk about Keenan Allen all night. A lot of these guys too, you like these older guys. Now, Keenan Allen's always been in the slot, but a lot of these older guys, like Adam Thielen, Larry Fitzgerald, the list goes on and on. And we talked about this when we talked about Adam Thielen before. It's like you move them into the slot or they stay in the slot, and it's like they don't need to be these downfield big time speedster. They're crafty. They're and Keenan Allen looks great. And he's in an offense that wants to throw the ball. And he's also had a pure run out too, right? Like Mike Williams gets hurt for the year. Johnston's terrible. Palmer's hurt. Everybody's hurt. Everett's been hurt. Eckler's been hurt. It's just been perfect for him. So
Eckler's not getting any of the passes. So
I know, new offensive coordinator. Yeah. We thought that could happen, but I don't think we predicted that. But all right, 31 minutes in here. Let's get to some of these topics. Something that maybe not a lot of people saw. Kyren Williams, man, what a year that Kyren Williams is having. He was, I will say, was not on Keenan Allen a lot, but I was on Kyren late, not because I think he's good. He probably still isn't good, but because I just was kind of reading the tea leaves there in LA, and I just felt like they wanted him to be good, and then there were some injuries and some issues, and 13th round, 14th round. Okay. Especially I was drafting a lot of heavy receiver teams. Okay. I'll take I need another running back. He ends up smashing. Unfortunately, he's missed 5 weeks, but he could be a savior here down the stretch. Jerry, what are your thoughts on Kyren Williams?
I have 0 shares, and it's another one of those guys I have a big problem taking, guys like that I didn't see any chance for.
Yeah.
But you have to, at the end of the draft, you have to spread them out and pick different guys like that. And I seem to have a problem doing that, but he's unbelievable. They just keep feeding him, it's going to run him into the ground, I guess.
You keep hearing from and I think it's a function of people not having predicted it. And so that they want to be skeptical now. It's like, because I didn't see it coming. Well, they can't keep this workload up. He's not that talented. It's just the system. He's going to break. There's all these reasons why, because I didn't see it, it can't continue. But if you look at the numbers, of the 7 games he's played this season, he has played 80% of the snaps. That's second among RBs, only to Saquon. He's ran a route on 70% of dropbacks, which leads the league among RBs.
Bananas.
He has 22% of the Rams' expected fantasy points over those 7 games, which is 5th overall for running backs. I mean, fantasy points per game, he's second only to CMC. He's 5th overall in expected fantasy points per game. These are RB1 numbers across the board. I think it's time to start believing it.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, it's just, if people are having him, they're starting him. I think the whole believing in him is like more like right now is more of maybe a DFS thing. Because if you have Kyren Williams, you're freaking can't wait to get him into the lineup,
especially after this week. And I'm trying to think of a comparison. There's somebody I'm thinking of. I just can't remember. He reminds me a lot of something that happened to another guy a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's just they're not very. He comes out in the combine, everyone craps on him because he runs a 4.6, the slowest time ever for a running back at the combine. Doesn't test well at all. Then gets hurt in the opening game against Buffalo, defending their title in the opening Thursday night game two years ago in Vegas. Watch him, and he never really comes back from that out for the year, and so people kind of forget about him, and then you just a lot of times in the offseason you just gotta. It's hard. Jack, you were saying to put away your biases and just trust the coaches that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. I don't remember the exact words that they were using, but it looked like, especially towards the end of draft season, like he was going to be not the guy, but in the mix And when you're drafting heavy receiver teams, you just want a guy that's an injury away. He was an injury away, but no one's getting this workload in the NFL. Like nobody.
And we might not have known that Kyren was going to be the guy, but we did know that Sean McVay hates Cam Akers. That should have been enough of an opportunity for us. But I think, even this past week, I know people who sat Kyren Williams because he's back from injury. There's no way they're going to give him the full workload. Like, I think there's some benefit in fantasy to like the George Costanza do the opposite of just like whatever your initial input, like whatever the group think is, just, do the opposite. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be contrarian. And if it pans out, you're going to be standing out among the herd. And I think that Kyron's a great example, not only last week, but, all the way back to the draft.
For sure.
We'll all be looking for Kyrens next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Good
luck. Rashad White reminds me a lot of him. He gets all the work.
Yes.
Running back gets it. And that's where he's better than I thought he was. Better football player than I thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was early on in the season. He wasn't scoring touchdowns. Rashad White's a top 5 fantasy back. He might be top 2. He wasn't scoring any touchdowns earlier in the year. Now he's getting the touchdowns and all the work still. He's been smashing too, man. A guy that smashes last week, Pat Freiermuth, a guy that I was able to get off waivers in a couple teams the last 3 or 4 weeks. People gave up on him, comes back off the IR, does nothing the first week, then this last week. New offensive coordinators there. They go over for 400 yards for the first time ever in the history of Canada, right? Like Canada doesn't get him. Matt Canada doesn't get him over 400 yards once in like 4 years. As soon as he leaves, Freiermuth explodes. Jerry, what are your thoughts on Freiermuth? Do you have him at all? If you do, is he a guy that is he a must start the rest of the way?
Well, he was my first tight end I picked in the top 100.
Oh, there you go.
And then he got hurt, and so I dropped him. And
there you go. That's right.
I picked him up in the last few weeks, but I didn't start him. I mean, did he play last week? I mean, the week before
he did, but not much, and didn't really score much.
Yeah. So I didn't start him. I picked him up in a few, leagues that I wasn't going to start him. But God, I'm going to this week, I guess. I mean,
it's real.
Yeah, Jack, where do you again? Is this a Kyler situation? Not Kyler, a Kyren situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I believe what I see? Like, where do you? I mean, you probably don't have any rankings in front of you, but like, where do you have him? Like, what? Listen, tight end's so barren. If you don't have one of the top 3, like, you might be looking to be excited about starting Pat Freiermuth.
I absolutely, and I think especially compared to last season, tight end is actually. I mean, Andrew's out, but there's a whole lot more options. Between Hawkinson, Laporta, the emergence of McBride, and I would put Freiermuth right up there with just that group with Laporta and McBride at this point, because
Kincaid does. So don't forget my guy Kincaid now. Come on.
Oh, yep, can't forget that. But among the Steelers pass catchers last week, I mean, he led them in everything.
Yeah.
Among all wide receivers, in targets per route run, yards per route run, like all of that. And then I looked, okay, maybe that's just because the Steelers are the Steelers. So if you compare him to every other tight end last week, he led all tight ends in air yards, targets per route run, receptions, yards, percentage of team yards, yards after the catch. And the most impressive thing out of all of that, he had 11 targets. All 11 of those, he was either the first read or it was a designed play for him. So they schemed 11 targets to him. I mean, I don't see why that's going to change anytime soon.
Especially when they go for 400 yards for the first time in forever. Tomlin's going to go in there and be like, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't score a lot of points, but the yards were there. Hey, maybe they need to start throwing Freiermuth more in the red zone. Come on, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they drafted him for, right? For touchdown, red zone. Mm-hmm. And he was real good at it. A couple of years.
That's right. Speaking of teams that are good in the red zone, the Chiefs, although not so much this year, their scoring's been way down.
Not in the second half.
Not in the second half. But prior to last week, did they score a second half touchdown last week? I didn't even look. Yeah, I'm sure.
Last week
it was the Raiders.
Yeah.
It was the Raiders. They did.
They sucked in the first half.
But prior to that, they didn't score a second half touchdown for a month. Prior to that, so they've been struggling. The receivers, Jerry, we've been talking about the receivers a bunch on this show. I know Jack was Oliver Watson. He's scoring touchdowns, getting targets. What are you doing with this Chiefs receiver group? Is it just Rice and maybe some Watson if you're forced into it? Is there anybody else? Is it Kelsey? What are you thinking?
Well, after y'all's show 2 or 3 weeks ago when y'all mentioned Watson.
Dumpster dive.
I went and picked him up a bunch, and because I'd picked him a little bit before that show, and then I said, well, I'm gonna go get some more of him. So I actually used him. I think he scored a touchdown that
he did. Yep.
But Jesus,
almost 2.
Oh, that's right.
That team against the Eagles, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, he dropped 3 right in his hands, and MVS drops the winning touchdown, and then Kelsey even dropped one. I've never seen anything like that, and I think that's catching up with Mahomes in Kansas City. It's just pathetic wide receivers. Rice is good, but every time I looked up, he was on the sideline. I couldn't figure that out, and but Jesus, it's catching up with them, I think. I mean, they do not have an NFL caliber receiver on their team except Rice, I don't believe.
Yeah, I mean, he led
the way with it. Right?
Yeah, Rice led the team in target share at 31%, 71% route participation, 24 fantasy points last week. As a Bills fan, I hate to say it, but the Chiefs, I think you're right, Jerry. I think it's catching up with them. Maybe not this year, but next year you could see an explosion of receiving talent on this Chiefs team between free agency and drafting and trades. They might be like, you know what? We got to get Mahomes more weapons. Kelsey's getting older, and they could just retool. I mean, you could see Higgins going. I don't know what the cap situations are like or whatever, but you could see them easily just firing up 2 or 3 really good receivers there. And then they're off and running again to some big time scoring seasons. But Jack, what do you think?
They're going to have to.
Re-sign Mecole Hardman.
That's right.
No.
Oh my God! What a disaster.
No. I mean, Rice definitely saw the bump in targets, routes, yards per route run in Week 12 compared to the rest of it. I worry a little bit that that Kadarius Toney was out and Mecole Hardman to IR. That's going to be that way for 4 weeks. But it looks like Toney's practicing again. I don't see an on the field reason or a reason in the data why they should scale Rashee Rice back at all. I don't see it schematically, but they have. They've done it for 11 weeks prior to Week 12. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that they'll turn him loose. But they seem to be throttling themselves. And having wind sprints from MVS, and it's just a lot of wasted routes that just aren't really advancing their offense.
Yeah, I agree, and I expected more. He was hurt last week. I expected McKinnon to come out of the bye and be really involved. He scored a touchdown going into the bye, and I'm like, all right, well, here comes the same year he had last year at the end of the year, kind of blowing up. That hasn't happened. It's just been, yeah, like you said, empty wind sprints, and the other running back. I mean, even CEH has been getting more touches, which is kind of weird because he's terrible. But
he looked fat to y'all the other night against
Ben looking fat.
He looks like he gained 50 pounds.
Dude,
it's armor. He's wearing
armor. That's right. Well,
sure.
Pacheco's the one getting all the work. 71% route participation, 16% of the targets last week. 26 points. So I mean, he's been another guy that if you took him later on, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round, somewhere in there, right? You've been cashing in on him for sure.
I drafted McKinnon a lot on kind of the theory that the same thing that happened last year is going to happen again this year. They're going to get frustrated and just a bunch of checkdowns to McKinnon again, but at least so far, it seems like Pacheco's been ready to take that role over, which it makes sense if he's able to do it.
Sure.
Take that more pass blocking and pass catching role. Why tip people off by bringing in Jerick McKinnon?
Right.
As to what you're doing. So, yeah, Pacheco looks like that guy. Even though you can't not watch the game and make a comment about how that guy runs.
Right.
You just like he hates the earth, but
he hates the ground he's running.
He hates the ground he runs on. That's right, Jerry.
That's right.
Jonathan Taylor. Let's talk about
moment
him.
of silence.
A moment of silence. I mean, it's sick because I've got a couple big time teams that made it through, and I've got Jonathan Taylor. And I said I do feel a little bit better. I know the show is not about me, but I feel a little bit better because I went and looked, and a lot of the teams I'm facing in some playoffs and big weeks, they have Jonathan Taylor on their teams. So I'm like, okay, so at least it's kind of evened itself out a little bit. But a thumb injury, let's cross our fingers. It's a 2 to 3 week thing, and that we can get him back for the race for $150K and stuff like that. But I mean, are we all at all afraid? I'll start with you on this one, Jack. Are we at all afraid that Moss is going to come in again, smash again, and not give JT the full rollback that he had before he left?
I think I'm even more scared than that. Like, I'm pretty sure the 2 to 3 week time frame, if I remember right, that came from Jim Irsay, who is certainly not a reliable doctor, let alone like a reliable human being. So it could, 2 to 3 weeks off of a surgery, I don't know, maybe, but I could see that taking longer than expected, especially if Moss is doing well. And I didn't have a ton of JT as far as drafting goes, but
Sure.
I got kind of doubly bit because I didn't have any Zach Moss whatsoever because I didn't believe in that at all. And he's just been a revelation. So I don't know. If you just paid JT that much money and you've got Moss working just fine, I think all the incentives are to slow play it. And that doesn't work out for us very well.
If the Colts stunk, I would be as pessimistic as you are, but I think they're going to make a playoff push here, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why they want to get him back and get him going in there. Jerry, what do you think?
He was looking better every week,
Yeah.
You hate losing him. It looked like he was heading upwards. And I've got him 2 or 3 too, so no Moss at all. So. Yeah,
no Moss at all. I don't think anyone has a ton of Moss. If they do, they got him off like the 1 week they got him off waivers because Randy got Zach Moss was in Buffalo. Same with Singletary. It doesn't make any sense. They both stunk in Buffalo. Like they were we're not good by any metric, the eye test, the animal, nothing. And here they are smashing. But I think JT's interesting. Because I don't have a lot of JT either, but for some reason, some of the teams that advanced already had JT on. It was very, very weird. But and it doesn't kill you too much if you got him in that sweet spot where you got him in I'm in a 5K where I got him in like the 7th or 8th round because it was that sweet spot where we didn't know what was going to happen. So that doesn't necessarily kill me. And in that league, I have Rashad White and another decent running back, so I'll be okay. But it just stinks for fantasy teams, man. Down that you get this far and then you lose a running back just like that. But a guy that's, J.K. Dobbins, close to my heart. He was my highest owned player in fantasy this year was J.K. Dobbins. I lose him before I even get on the plane to leave Vegas. I lose J.K. Dobbins. I'm sitting at the bar like, oh my God, what just happened? Keaton Devon A. Chain Mitchell has been a revelation to us all. Jack, I'll let you go here because Keaton Mitchell's a guy that I know you've been high on recently.
Yeah, and he kind of, when Devon A. Chain happens, then when subsequent running backs that are kind of the same, smaller stature, speed guys, when they don't just immediately take over just like he did, it's easy to be skeptical. But if you look from week 9 to week 12, he's about tripled the snaps that he has. His carries have gone up about 20%. His routes are about 4x what they were, and he's getting at least 2 targets on average per week. So, you're seeing that usage slowly grow up, which makes sense coming off of an injury and trying to ease him in as a rookie. Harbaugh's a more conservative coach, so kind of working him in, especially when you have established veterans like Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. But he was the leading running back for the Baltimore Ravens in week 12. And I think, when it comes from usage, when it comes not only just being on the field, but actual usage. And to me, 2 of the things that just kind of, the things that blew me away about him he leads the league in yards after contact per attempt.
Wow.
So, you have this idea that he's
Yeah.
just this speed guy and that's all he has. They were running him up the middle. They had no concerns about his size in terms of giving him the heavy workload. He can keep going after contact. At the same time, he also, is up there second only to Achane in explosive runs. And on top of the yards after contact stuff, he also has it's 0.55 missed tackles per attempt, which is more than Achane, Jalen Warren, and it's actually right behind Nick Chubb. So, in terms of being able to not only keep going after contact and force a missed tackle and have the explosive runs, and you're a pass catcher, like this is kind of the dream run out. That doesn't mean that it's going to pan out for the weeks 15 to 17, but this is as promising of a candidate as we have that hasn't yet fully broken out at the running back position this year.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I had more of him. I saw Jack picking him, in all my leagues, and I hadn't seen him much. And then he broke some run, and before he got to the end zone, he fell down in the end zone like nobody touched him. I said, "Well, this guy's not that good," but I hadn't seen that much of him. But the other night, he looked really good, and I forget who they were playing. I guess San Diego, the Chargers. And he didn't do much, I don't think, but God, he looked good, man. I said, this guy looks really good. So I wish I had more of it.
Yeah, the thing that running backs need, man, to really peak, they need the catches and they need the goal line work. I've been a huge Keaton Mitchell guy. My co-host on my other podcast, the Deep End, Mike Shope, was on him early on in the year. So I got it from him. It's not like I was like studying film on Keaton Mitchell or anything, but like, the thing that he needs Gus Edwards to step aside, which I don't think is going to happen. It's definitely not going to happen. If there's an injury to Gus Edwards, fine. But like Gus Edwards is that goal line back. Now he's taking a lot more of the between the 20 stuff away from Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is almost just like a straight up goal line back now, short yardage back, which is good. It's good. Don't get me wrong. But he either needs to be much more heavily involved in the passing game or much more heavily involved in the goal line work to really be able to be like, I'm going to start this guy in the fantasy playoffs. He's talented. I get it. But I just wish that they would involve him more, make it a point to get in the ball more. I mean, all these other Andrews is hurt. The receivers stink outside of Zay Flowers. Like, he should be like their number 2 weapon. It should be him and Zay Flowers getting all the touches all the time. And again, like you stated, Jack, it's heading that, the 4 weeks in a row, it's quadrupled and all that stuff. Hopefully it continues to go that way. And hopefully he can get those high value touches.
I think he will.
The one interesting thing about the usage last week was the inside the 5 and goal line carries didn't go to Gus Edwards. They went to Justice Hill, which was
bizarre,
weird.
Bizarre. Yeah,
I don't see that at all. But I don't know. The blue sky thinker in me, well, if they can give him to Justice Hill, they can give him to Keaton Mitchell.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm keeping the hope alive. But when you can bust off explosive runs like he can, you can have, goal line work at the 20-yard line.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. At the 20-yard line. Listen, that's got to be a logo on a T-shirt. Goal line work at the 20-yard line. I love that one. But hey, we're pushing an hour here, guys. I know we got some waivers probably to finish up here. Big waiver week here. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been awesome talking ball with you. Congratulations on your success so far. Good luck on the Survivor Pool. I'm glad we could help you confirm we're going to take like 1% of the credit when the Jags win and no percent of the credit if they lose. So thanks.
I will ask a favor here, Adam.
Yes, of course.
I'm going to ask a quick favor before the end of the show. Please indulge me, Adam and Jerry, as I'm contractually obligated to advocate for Jackson Smith and Jigba in every single episode. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to read briefly Pete Carroll's comments at the presser from after the last game. We have to maximize our people and have to make sure we're putting them in the best positions to contribute. I feel like we're not. I feel like we're not seeing stuff. You saw the playmaking of Jackson again last night, and he continues to show stuff that separates him from others, and we just need to give him more chances.
Woo!
So I've fulfilled my contractual obligations. Jackson Smith and Jigba, rest of season.
Sell your Jake Bobo shares now, okay? Jake, done.
He's not. Pete Carroll's not talking Bobo in the press conference.
I know.
So.
I know. And listen, he's in a good. Carroll's in a good mood because his boy Charbonnet now is going to get all the run again because Walker's out. So Pete's loving life. Were you on JSN, Jerry? Was he one of your guys?
No, I mean I know Lob. I forget that's his team name. He was picking him every draft I saw, and I wasn't on him for some reason.
Well,
I think it was a hamstring injury.
Up till Jerry, you've been correct by the way. I'm not saying you shouldn't have, but like it's just one of those guys where like you take him and he like a lot of times you take players and you look for the run out, right? Like if this goes right there, nothing's gone right for him. Gino's been terrible, the offense has been terrible, and no one in front of him has missed a game. So it's like he doesn't get there, maybe one game. He hasn't had that opportunity like some of the other guys have gotten. So if there's like I'm never dropping him. If there's an injury and he's got the nice schedule down the stretch, he could have that smash week for sure.
Well, DK ain't ever going to miss, and Lockett's a tough guy too. So it's hard to get.
He's always banged up. Yeah.
Keep the dream alive, guys.
Keep the dream alive. That's right. That's right. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us. And good luck to everybody this week in all their fantasy leagues and that push for the playoffs. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.